Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And my god, what a week.
Oh my god, so much going on. I felt like every day there was something else happening with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
And it honestly kind of kept me going this week.
Yeah. You couldn't relax for a second.
I felt like I was hyper.
I haven't been so excited since we got the push notification in John Lewis about them stepping away from the royal family in the first place.
It hasn't reached quite that level for me, but I did feel quite giddy at moments. But let's go back to the beginning of the week, even before the beginning of the week, even before we'd released our last episode on Sunday night. Sunday, which was Valentine's Day, all you lovers out there. Just as we were finishing the episode, we got a push notification that Archie is going to be a big brother.
Yeah, so Harry and Meghan released a statement saying, "We can confirm that Archie is going to be a big brother. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are overjoyed to be expecting their second child."
I mean, this was amazing news. We were so delighted. And then, even more exciting, they released a photo. This incredibly unroyal photo. Don't think there's ever been a royal baby bump reveal.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this was a black and white photo, very in keeping with the Sussex style, of Harry and Meghan relaxing outside, presumably in the garden of their Montecito home.
They truly love the plan, don't they?
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about the details of this photo later in Fit for a King, but the photographer who took the photo via iPad...
I'm always so intrigued by that. How does it work?
He's over here, I think. So he was doing it from the UK across iPad. Anyway, Miss Anne Harriman, he wrote, "Meg, I was there at your wedding to witness this love story begin, and my friend, I'm honoured to capture it grow. Congratulations to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex on this joyous news."
The reaction in general, though, was fairly mixed. Like
Over here,
yeah. I mean, there was a lot of positive reaction, which should really be the matter of course for like a pregnancy announcement. But also, I mean, in particular, it's only a few months, like I think 2.5 months since Meghan shared her experience of miscarriage in her piece for the New York Times.
The main criticisms, as I'm sure all of our listeners saw, were around privacy. And how could this couple who claim to want privacy not only announce a pregnancy, but do so with a photo? There were lots of tweets about this. Also, kind of the big viral one that I saw was the front page of the Daily Star, a tabloid we never talk about.
Yeah.
This isn't, what many people would consider a reputable tabloid, but they had a picture of Harry and Meghan on the front page with the headline, "You couldn't make this up. Publicity shy woman tells 7.67 billion people I'm pregnant."
I just felt like this was such a bad faith reaction to someone's pregnancy announcement, and you wouldn't have it for anybody else in the world, I don't think.
And I think the fact that it was so mean-spirited was particularly remarkable, because I think that was actually the exact 1-year anniversary of the death of Caroline Flack.
Right.
And you see a lot of these people using this hashtag be kind online. Mm. I'm sure a lot of the same people who were being less than kind about this news for Harry and Meghan. But I think because this whole issue of privacy versus publicity keeps coming up, I thought it might be useful or interesting maybe for us to talk about what have the Sussexes actually said about privacy and what have they not said?
Yeah.
Because one of our listeners sent us an interview a few months ago that Meghan had done during her time on Suits with a blogger called Lance Chung. And he asked Meghan how she decides how much of her life to share on her lifestyle blog, The Tig. Long live The Tig. And Meghan said, "I'm really clear on the distinction between my personal life and my private life. I had this conversation with Gabriel," that's Gabriel Macht, who plays Harvey Specter on Suits.
True legend.
Favourite character. "I had this conversation with Gabriel on set the other day. We were talking about social media and what we put out there about our lives. Gabriel said, 'Well, yeah, but you have the Tig and that's so private.' And I told him, 'No, that's personal. It's not private. You have to dig pretty deep to find anything about my private life.' The things that I share are intimate, vulnerable, and from the heart. Yes, Megan. But at the same time, I think the moment you give people even an inkling of something that is most precious to you, they feel like they have the right to dissect it. I like to keep it separate and have something for myself. My family, my dearest friends, my partner, you have to keep something for yourself. I feel like this is still Megan's philosophy today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can really tell that as someone in the public eye, as an actor, but also as a woman and a black woman in the public eye, Megan's been forced to really consider the definition or the difference between private and personal and what the public should have access to. And clearly that just got ramped up to an even more ridiculous degree once she became royal.
Yeah, and I think, you know, something that she has hinted at is that as a woman in the royal family, you don't have a lot of agency.
Yeah.
But as royals, since joining the royal family, I was looking for examples of when Meghan, through a palace statement or something, not through a source or a friend or whatever, but when has Meghan officially asked for or demanded privacy? And I think the most kind of significant one was in April 2019, a month before the birth of Archie, when Buckingham Palace released a statement saying their Royal Highnesses have taken a personal decision to keep the plans around the arrival of their baby private. The Duke and Duchess look forward to sharing the exciting news with everyone once they have had an opportunity to celebrate privately as a new family.
When you just look at this statement, doesn't it just seem like the most logical thing in the world to want privacy at that time?
Oh yeah, but I'm just talking about how this was what I think was the beginning of this narrative of privacy-obsessed Harry and Meghan becoming really entrenched.
Right, yeah,
and then it really accelerated with this fuck-up around the release of information around the birth, because you had that statement coming from the palace that Meghan had gone into labour when actually at that point she'd already given birth, and it was never entirely clear what went on there, but we've heard from a lot of royal reporters that statements were going out at different times to different publications, and it wasn't a very coordinated or very well coordinated communication strategy at all. But then after that, you had the announcement that Harry and Meghan wouldn't be revealing the names of the godparents, and that really caused meltdowns.
I know, like, I just couldn't have imagined that people would get so worked up about godparents in this day and age.
Quick, can you name me any of Prince George's godparents? Name one.
Diana's sister? Is she one of them?
Tom, I don't know. I have no idea. I couldn't care less. I don't know why anybody cares. But anyway, at the time, Harry and Meghan's statement said the godparents, in keeping with their wishes, will remain private. So that to me is kind of strike two in this build-up to privacy-obsessed Meghan Markle.
Yeah. So then you jump ahead to the Sussexes' announcement that they're stepping back and the launch of their website, sussexroyal.com, on which they wrote, "The royal family respect and understand the wish of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to live a more independent life as a family by removing the supposed public interest justification for media intrusion into their lives."
I was trying to find out more about this because on the website they also link to the Information Commissioner's Office document on public interest and the public interest test to determine what is of the public interest rather than just information that the public is interested in.
Yeah.
But it is a bit complicated.
As far as we can kind of make out, it seems that by removing the sovereign grant money that they were getting, it would take away the public interest in them because it's no longer about the public trying to determine how their money is being spent. So by removing that, they felt they could lead a more independent and private life.
Yeah, and there isn't really a set definition for what the public interest justification is, and that's on purpose so that it can be judged on a case-by-case basis when freedom of information requests come in. But it's generally used to cover a wide range of values and principles related to the public good or what is in the best interest of society.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily know if the identities of Archie's godparents are like a necessary benefit to society. Like, do we need to know those in order to progress as a society? I don't think so. But
on this website, you know, you'd swear that they had demanded total privacy, that they said we are going to withdraw and become totally recluse. But actually, the big emphasis on the website was about changing the relationship with the media. Mm-hmm. And they outlined their stance on media in general, where they said that they recognise that their roles as members of the royal family are subject to interest, and they welcome accurate and honest media reporting as well as being held to account if appropriate. Equally, like every member of society, they also value privacy as individuals and as a family.
This is absolutely in line with what the rest of the royals expect as well, even though they receive sovereign grant money. So according to the royal family's website, like everyone else, the Queen and members of the royal family are entitled to private lives. And then they go on about the kind of exemptions to Freedom of Information Acts, like you can't ever find out what's in the Queen's correspondence with other people. But this is not unusual that Harry and Meghan felt like they were entitled to a private life.
Yeah, and they said that they still wanted to keep using their social media to communicate directly with people, and that they also wanted to continue sharing personal photos, but that they wanted to pull out of the royal rota system and establish their revised media strategy. Because, as they explained on the website, the convention was that if any member of the royal family wanted to release a photo that hadn't been previously seen by the public, they would be expected to give the image to the royal rota simultaneously or in advance of their own release of it. And Harry and Meghan said that that makes it challenging for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to personally share moments in their lives directly with members of the public via social media, for example, without first going through the filter of the royal rota. So there was nowhere there where they said, we're not sharing anything ever again. In fact, they said we want to continue sharing. And I think even some of the language was like, we want to share more. So I feel like that was never part of the plan.
Yeah.
To shut things down completely.
No, absolutely. And I think it's a handier narrative for parts of the media to talk about them being privacy obsessed rather than saying that they've limited the profits that the Royal Rota approved outlets can make by getting, first access to royal photos. I
think, though, part of the reason that this narrative about Harry and Meghan demanding privacy has taken hold in the way that it has is because, as Johnny Diamond, the royal reporter for the BBC, put it, public exposure of what most people would think of as private life is part of royal duty. So it definitely feels like over here, people feel that Harry and Meghan are almost shirking their royal duties by refusing to share things like frequent photos of Archie or instant details about his birth. All of that stuff people really feel entitled to.
Yeah.
Here. And I think that became even more of a sticking point when Harry and Meghan began their legal actions against the tabloid media, who obviously then took it personally.
Yeah, they really latched onto Meghan's case about the letter to her father, Thomas Markle, as evidence of this obsession, quote, with privacy.
Yeah, and I was seeing tweets this week equating Meghan suing for an invasion of privacy and Meghan invading her own privacy by announcing her pregnancy news.
Yeah.
Which is just an astonishingly ignorant way of putting it.
I know.
These things are not the same. And this was coming from respected reporters. How can you turn off your critical faculties in that way? And I do think this approach that they take to privacy and publicity is very much in the sort of celebrity mold.
Yeah.
They want to control their own publicity, choosing what parts of their life to make public and what should remain unseen, which they tried to do as royals by launching the Sussex Royal Instagram and establishing their own royal household separately from the Cambridges. And I do think, obviously you can still be critical of that approach, which we often are, and that desire to control your own narrative, but that is something that all celebrities do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just shows that there is such a fine line to tread and that it's so unprecedented to have someone moving from the royal sphere into the celebrity sphere and how uneasy people feel about that.
Yeah, because they never said that they would or wanted to become complete recluses. They just wanted to be able to announce things on their own terms without the British people feeling, like you said, they have this claim to know everything about them because of the sovereign grant money. And pretending that Harry and Meghan are publicity shy or privacy obsessed is a deliberate misreading of the situation.
I know, and I just hate how this has all centered around what should be such happy news.
Yeah.
And like the pregnancy announcement to me is a very clear case of a woman wanting to announce something on her own terms before the paparazzi breaks the news.
Yeah.
Particularly following the recent tragic loss of a baby. It makes total fucking sense that she would want to celebrate and share this happy news with people. And, you know, we were saying this week, you were saying to me, like, realistically, she couldn't keep this entire pregnancy and birth completely private. Like, it would become public at some stage. So this allows Meghan to decide when that moment is, and it gives her back the agency that she reportedly felt she didn't have as a member of the royal family.
But as though this conversation about the Sussexes and privacy needed any more fuel, I think the next day we got the news via ITV that the Duchess of Sussex has agreed to sit down in the US with the TV host Oprah Winfrey in what could be an explosive and revealing interview about Meghan and Harry's departure from the royal family.
This was electrifying news.
Oh my god.
So we shortly then got the official announcement, which revealed that this interview will be taking place on March 7th, and that Harry will also be joining Meghan and Oprah at some point in a 90-minute special. Fuck! 90 minutes!
Oh my god, it's going to be so good. But according to CBS, Meghan's going to be interviewed about stepping into life as a royal, marriage, motherhood, and how she's handling life under intense public pressure.
CBS described it as an intimate conversation.
So you know they're going to be getting into some really good stuff.
But that also makes it sound like intimate in the home. Are we going to be getting some shots of Harry and Meghan's home? Are we going to get a little tour? Are we going to get some insight into the 16th bathroom? No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I think we'll get some stuff in the garden at the very least.
Cameos from the dogs.
Oh yeah, I hope so. If we don't get the dogs, we'll at least get Harry, who's going to join them, and they'll talk together about their move to America last year and their future plans.
Before we get into the sort of hysterical discussion about what they're going to talk about in this interview, what do you think they're going to talk about in this interview?
I think there's going to be a lot of anger towards the British media.
Why is that, Tom?
That has been their main topic of discussion recently. There are obviously a lot of things that should be said about these practices. I mean, a lot of it's already been said. Some of it by Harry.
I think as well there's going to be a lot of very worthy, very earnest talk about purpose and their new focus in life and their work and Archwell and all that kind of stuff. I do not think there are going to be any major revelations about the royal family, though. I feel like at most there'll be an emphasis on the institution rather than the family, and I would be stunned. I mean, I'd be delighted, but stunned if they named any names. I mean, what about you? Do you think Oprah's going to ask about Prince Andrew?
I think she might. Like, I think if anybody could ask about Andrew, it would be Oprah.
Yeah, I feel like Oprah is the most famous interviewer in the world, and she knows what people want to know about.
Yeah.
So she's going to ask the questions that we would all want to ask.
Yeah, even if Harry and Meghan don't give the answer that we'd all really love to hear.
Yeah, I feel like it's just going to be... We're not going to say anything about that.
I really liked how Lainey Gossip covered the initial announcement and the reaction from, predominantly the British press about this Oprah interview. She said, "People seem to be assuming that Harry and Meghan will tell Oprah about all their grievances. But what if it's the opposite? What if they're like, this is the best thing we ever did, and we are where we belong, and we're happy, and we are working on our causes and championing the organisations that are helping people, and we have our purpose and are fulfilled. No looking back. The whole point of the game is to believe that being royal and part of the team is the fucking jackpot of everything. But if these two pieced out and seem to be thriving, how does that work with the royal image? Wouldn't that undermine the idea that being royal was the best possible option for Harry and Meghan, and perhaps anyone else?"
I think it's such a good point. And
Yeah.
I know you were saying earlier in the week that you would love if they did this because it would be such a fuck you to the royal family, although it would be enormously boring TV and such a letdown for us personally.
I mean, I want names named. I want, all the gossip. I want to find out as close to the truth as I can possibly get about all of this stuff. That is obviously what I want. But secondary to that is I like when they say fuck you to the royals, and this would be a way of saying fuck you to the royals that wouldn't really have any repercussions. Like, it would be really hard for people to criticize them for not talking about the Queen or other members of the royal family, and I think I probably would quite enjoy watching what kind of gymnastics people have to do in order to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I think from their statements later in the week, which we'll get onto in a moment, they are still very raw, so I can't imagine there will be this serene tranquility in their responses. But let's talk a little bit about the reaction over here to this news, because it was wild.
Absolutely.
There was so much preemptive anger about things that haven't even been said yet.
Yeah.
Everyone automatically assuming they are going to just absolutely shit all over the royal family, humiliate the Queen, reveal the most personal secrets about every member of the royal family.
The press are really doing Harry and Meghan's job for them by being so openly scared about what might come out about the royal family.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because Lainey Gossip, in another piece, was talking about how this kind of frantic panic is kind of off-brand for the British royals, because their whole thing is meant to be never complain, never explain. And she says, the monarchy is unflappable, allegedly, and yet we're getting story after story about how flapped they might be over Harry and Meghan and what tea might be spilled when they hang out with Oprah. That's so true.
Yeah.
And this has happened a lot since Harry and Meghan left the royal family. Like, we've heard a lot about how outraged and how devastated and how disappointed they are. They're kind of constantly complaining and explaining.
Yeah.
But I noticed that the palace put out a statement about this, saying that Duke and Duchess are no longer working members of the royal family, and therefore any decisions they take with regard to media commitments are matters for them. As non-working members of the royal family, they are under no obligation to inform the royal household of such plans regarding the interview, even though people were very shocked that the Queen reportedly was not consulted or informed ahead of the announcement about the Oprah interview.
It's so funny. Like, we should say as well that all this speculation is despite a source saying that the couple are said to have the greatest respect and love for the Queen and will not say anything to undermine that. So I feel like they're not even going to talk about the Queen.
Yeah.
Other than to say, like, we love Granny. It was probably pretty inevitable that any Sussex interview with anyone was going to raise a lot of hackles in the press, especially the British press. But it does seem like the specific choice of Oprah, the most famous celebrity interviewer in the whole world, is particularly galling to some members of the British press.
Yeah, and the fact that she's friendly with Harry and Meghan. I did feel like there was a lot of attempts to sort of downplay Oprah's status. Like, The Express's royal reporter Richard Palmer tweeted Harry and Meghan to talk to their friend Oprah Winfrey, who made her name doing tabloid TV talk shows.
Yeah, that phrasing of it is really doing, like, double service. It's at once, like, having a go at Harry and Meghan for engaging in someone who's ever been involved in the tabloids, which they claim to hate, and then also trying to disparage Oprah's beginnings as a talk show host. But it really does, like, make it very clear to me when they start going after Oprah, like, why is Oprah the best person to interview Meghan? Like, who could understand Meghan better, really? The Times also went with an angle on Oprah, and one that isn't particularly new, but it's that Oprah has been scheming for this interview for years. And they described it as playing the long game, and saying that she had acted as the Duchess of Sussex's mentor, even befriending her mother Doria Ragland when they moved to the US. So all this stuff as though Oprah has been lying, has been deceitful in order to get close to the couple, as though if she had no relationship with the Sussexes at all, she wouldn't get this interview.
Yeah, and the other big thing that they reported was that apparently Oprah had only met Meghan once before the wedding that she attended. And I think, a lot of people pointed out that that really doesn't matter, that Meghan and Harry's wedding was very symbolic for black people, and to have one of the most famous black women in the world attending this wedding was a lot more meaningful than how many times they've met or what kind of friendship they had.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many fucking people at these royal weddings anyway. I don't really see why it's a big deal. But I do think that this kind of reporting and seeing a lot of people talking about this online, the aim of all that to me seems to be to minimise Oprah and therefore to minimise the Sussexes, particularly Meghan. There was a really great piece in The Guardian this week by their columnist Marina Hyde. I'm sure a lot of you have read it already.
Yeah.
But she put it so well when she said, naturally you can see why some small pond UK pundits simply can't handle the Sussexes' move to America. It's a horrendous moment when you realise your competition for royal stories and interviews is no longer some necrotic dipsomaniac on a rival tabloid, but Oprah. Much UK media reaction to Meghan and Harry reeks of this gathering powerlessness.
She just really hits the nail on the head with that, I think. Like, this increasing desperation amongst the various members of the press to try and discredit everything about this interview.
And after it was announced, the reports in the Mail, the front page of the Mail on, was it Tuesday or Wednesday, was about how the Queen was going to ask Harry and Meghan to relinquish their links with all of their remaining royal patronages, which are the ones that were passed down through the royal family. And according to royal sources, there is now no way back to official duties. So this was kind of earlier in the week, and it really made it sound like this was a punishment following the news of the Oprah interview.
Yeah.
And so much so that the Daily Mail's reporter, Rebecca English, ended up on Twitter trying to clarify that this wasn't a punitive exercise. But it kept building like this.
Yeah, I mean, the Telegraph reported that the annual review would be brought forward from the end of March, which is when it was previously scheduled for. And the Mail reported that Harry could be banned from wearing his military uniforms at future engagements when the Queen strips him of his patronages and armed forces titles. So, like, very much linking these things all together.
But anyway, on Friday then we got the official announcement with a statement from the palace. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have confirmed to Her Majesty the Queen that they will not be returning as working members of the royal family. Following conversations with the Duke, the Queen has written confirming that in stepping away from the work of the royal family, it is not possible to continue with the responsibilities and duties that come with a life of public service. The honorary military appointments and royal patronages held by the Duke and Duchess will therefore be returned to Her Majesty before being redistributed among working members of the royal family. While all are saddened by their decision, the Duke and Duchess remain much loved members of the family. Let's go through this line by line.
So, first and foremost, I love the fact that Harry and Meghan said, no, we're not coming back. Clearly, America is really working out for them, and that is where they want to stay.
Yeah, and it's the fact that they have told the Queen they're not coming back, not the Queen told them they can't come back.
Yeah.
The palace statement also uses their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, which is a handy way to remind people that they are not being stripped of those titles. But it is also a very different tone from her statements last year, which had that personal touch, referring to them by their first names, Harry and Meghan. This one is much colder, even with that line at the end about being much loved members of the family.
You mean that didn't warm your heart?
Also, conversations with the Duke, no Meghan mentioned, pointedly left out. They're presumably not involved in the formal talks, which also felt very chilly to me.
Yeah, absolutely. The line that they put in about service seems like a real rebuke. So even though palace sources came to Chris Shipp at ITV to say that this was intended as a statement of fact rather than a rebuke, it still comes across as a bit of a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that last line, all are saddened by their decision, Like, is that meant to be an olive branch? It doesn't feel like it to me.
Yeah, and I just feel like there's not really anything in Harry and Meghan's decision here that wasn't in the decision they made this time last year. You know, they want to be apart from the royal family doing separate work. It seems more like they were saddened that Harry in particular didn't change his mind and come back. That's what saddened them.
And while the statement says all are saddened, it felt to me like Harry and Meghan were maybe more angry than saddened, particularly about this statement, because they delivered a sort of a rebuttal in their own dueling statement when they said, as evidenced by their work over the past year, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex remain committed to their duty and service to the UK and around the world, and have offered their continued support to the organisations they have represented, regardless of official role. We can all live a life of service. Service is universal. No mention of the Queen, no mention of the family, no mention of any kind of personal feeling there, which, you know, it feels pretty emotionless for a couple that have been so publicly characterized as being hyper emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you said, it seems to be like a real anger in their words about service, which is very understandable because so much of their brand now is about, you know, the work that they do with organizations to help both them and the people that those organizations help. So they very much see themselves as people who are in a role of service. And to have that taken away from them by the Queen clearly doesn't sit very well.
But even just to put this statement out so soon after the Palace's statement, it's sort of like they're firing shots at each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree.
I thought Chris Shipp, the royal editor for ITV, did an interesting piece explaining what went down, the sort of inside story between the Queen and the Sussexes this week, because I think it was ITV anyway, that broke the story about the Oprah interview a few hours before it was officially announced. And I remember us talking and we were kind of wondering, like, did they plan to announce the interview this week? Was it the plan all along to announce the pregnancy and then the interview the following day, or did they have to rush the official announcement once ITV sort of scooped them?
It did seem really quick, didn't it?
Yeah, and Chris Shipp reported that the Sussexes had planned to have what he describes as the divorce settlement signed and sealed before announcing the Oprah news, and that Buckingham Palace obviously weren't told about the Oprah news in advance, so they had to complete the negotiations this week in what he describes as a more tense atmosphere than they'd both anticipated.
Then if you add into that the fact that Prince Philip has been in hospital this week, the timing is like very messy and makes it seem like there's a lot of bitterness on both sides, and that's really, I think, amped up by the kind of not so subtle links between like Philip is in hospital because of all this crazy news.
And I think as well that it does sort of bring to mind the hasty statements that were being put out last January when Harry and Meghan left, and everybody was sort of scrambling and trying to get things together, and doing this week when Prince Philip is in hospital seems to suggest that this was absolutely not the plan.
Yeah.
And as well as that, it was funny to me that these announcements came out on Prince Andrew's birthday.
Yeah, a handy way of shifting the focus away from him and the fact that nobody said anything about his birthday.
Well, the royal family Twitter account said something. They kind of marked it in a roundabout way by tweeting these pictures of the Queen and baby Prince Andrew with an on this day tweet. I think we talked about it before, about how he was the first son to be delivered to a reigning monarch in however many years.
Right, yeah.
But it was also very convenient then, because those of us who were paying attention remembered that Prince Andrew is kind of living the half in, half out royal life that was denied to Harry and Meghan. And Omid Scobie, the royal reporter and biographer of Harry and Meghan, pointed out that he actually gets to keep all of his titles. He gets to use his HRH. He gets to hang on to those honorary military appointments that have been taken away from Harry.
So we can all wish a very unhappy belated birthday to HRH Prince Andrew, Honorary Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, Royal Colonel of the Royal Highland Fusiliers, Colonel-in-Chief of the Yorkshire Regiment, the Royal Irish Regiment, and Small Arms School Corps. Jesus Christ, it's a mouthful.
But back to Harry and Meghan. So during the week, you had this very interesting back and forth about what was going to happen to their patronages. And Richard Palmer at The Express tweeted that the National Theatre had told The Express that it still wants Meghan to remain as its patron. But the Queen decided, obviously, that Harry and Meghan couldn't continue on with any of the patronages that had been handed down. So for Meghan, that's the National Theatre and the Association of Commonwealth Universities. And for Harry, that's his 3 honorary military appointments with the Royal Marines, RAF Honington, Royal Navy Small Ships and Diving, and his patronages with the Rugby Football Union and the Rugby Football League. As well as that, though, there's their joint patronage of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust.
God, it's a particularly stupid, tone-deaf move from the Queen to take your only non-white member of the family out of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust.
Yeah, and Chris Shipp also said in a tweet that, as I understand it from some of the charities, not all, no, they were not consulted in advance of the announcement. So who was blindsided this time? The Queen was blindsiding these poor charities.
But this was interesting to me because when they first started all this talk earlier in the week about how Harry is going to be stripped of his patronages and all of that, like, part of me was like, okay, like, if they can't be here to do their work, like, maybe it's better for the patronages to have members who are here.
Like Prince Edward.
Like Prince Edward. I mean, I don't really know very much about what happens in the military stuff, but, like, you know, theatres are having a really shit time at the moment, so I was like, we need someone who is going to do good stuff for the National Theatre.
Like Prince Edward.
Like Prince Edward, yeah. But what has become, like, very clear from a lot of these charities and organisations is that they would rather have Harry and Meghan on the other side of the world than a member of the royal family next door.
Yeah, like the Duke of Gloucester. You had Meghan and you end up with one of these old guys.
Absolutely. And it is, like, if you're going to use this argument that Harry and Meghan can't do the work that's required because they're on the other side of the world in their house. Like, everybody in this country has been inside their house for the last year. Like, everyone's been in the same boat as them. Although our boat doesn't have 16 bathrooms.
I did think, though, it got a little bit juicy then when a lot of their remaining patronages, including the Mayhew, SmartWorks, Wellchild, there was a few others, tweeted their delight that Harry and Meghan would be staying on as patrons and praising them for their work to date.
I know, and it just, you know, it reinforces the fact, like, you have to listen to the patronages when you're thinking about this issue, because they're the ones that matter in terms of, like, who is bringing them the most attention or doing the most good. Like, that is the point here. And the fact that they're just constantly talked about as these, like, trinkets that royals can pick up or have taken away is, I think, so disrespectful to so many of these organisations. But I was, like, very into the Sussexes' willingness to continue on in these roles, but as non-royals, because I think it could really expose to people this myth that the royal family has been peddling for decades, which is that their charity work is work that they deserve to be paid to do.
Yeah.
Like, if Harry and Meghan now famously have to make their own money, and they don't see any hardship in turning up to some events or just, you know, sending a photo to be used on social media or something like that, and not getting paid to do that, why do we need to reward the rest of the royal family so handsomely for the same work?
So if they can show that you can do that same work while also making a living doing something else, does that kind of show up how ridiculous a proposition the monarchy is in the 21st century to people on this side of the world as well?
You could only hope.
I was fascinated by this piece by Peter Hunt, a former royal correspondent for the BBC. He wrote in The Spectator about how the monarchy had failed Harry and Meghan and why the royals could and should have left the door ajar by working out some kind of arrangement that would welcome Harry and Meghan back for things like Trooping the Colour, or allow Harry to lay a wreath on Remembrance Sunday, or enable them to continue to represent the Queen at Commonwealth events, things like that. But he put it really well when he said, "The royals are superb at making it up as they go along. When the Queen was at an engagement last year and clearly didn't want to be seen wearing a mask, her officials came up with the wheeze of COVID testing all those she would encounter. Instead of doing the right thing ahead of state leading by example, they avoided a confrontation with a 94-year-old and opted for the easy option. Despite abandoning his training as a Royal Marine, the institution has managed to find a uniform that fits so Prince Edward can lay a wreath at the cenotaph." And the family even changed their name from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor at the height of anti-German sentiment during the First World War. So they can adapt and accommodate when it suits them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good to have all those examples listed out. It's so funny.
I do think he's right, though, and I think people will really look back on this in years to come as the Queen acting very poorly, and the royal family in general treating one of its own really badly. And, you know, it's one thing when we talk a lot about how Meghan was the first non-white member of the royal family and she could have done so much good. She would have been a huge asset to the family, both in terms of diversity and inclusion and things like that, but also glamour and excitement and passion and enthusiasm, which we sometimes feel other members of the royal family don't have for their work. But aside from Meghan, the way they have treated Harry has been abominable. I feel like stripping your grandson, one of the only members of the royal family who has actively served, of his honorary military titles and his patronages, and putting out this very chilly statement so soon after announcing that they were expecting a second child following a baby loss so recently is brutal behaviour.
Yeah.
Really, really unkind. And I think in years to come, people will look back on this as a punitive and very short-sighted measure by the Queen and the monarchy more broadly.
Yeah. And this is going to be Charles's mess to clean up, because it'll be him trying to kind of reignite interest in the royal family and try to keep it at the status that it's occupied in people's respect or esteem for most of the Queen's life when he is king. And he's not going to be able to do that without Harry and Meghan. And this treatment by the Queen is, like you said, brutal and cold and stupid. And Harry and Meghan should not forget that, and I'm sure they won't.
Okay, we are back from the future, back to the future. We just wanted to talk about some of the stuff that was in the Sunday papers today, mainly the splash in the Sunday Times, which ran with a quote about Prince William being furious at Harry and Meghan's insult to the Queen, but will misses Harry and hopes they can be reconciled.
And he's really going about it the right way.
On the front page of the Sunday Times. Will is said to be, quote, really sad and genuinely shocked by his brother's behaviour towards the Queen over Harry and Meghan's departure from royal life.
And sources close to Will say he believed Harry and Meghan had been insulting and disrespectful to the Queen, and he was very upset by what has happened.
And that's not all. A source close to the Queen described the response by the Sussexes to Buckingham Palace's announcement they would be giving up their royal duties as petulant and insulting to the Queen. They said, "Don't disrespect your granny, Harry." They had a third source as well who said, "You don't answer the Queen back. It's just not done."
Another aide was talking about Will and said, once he got over the anger of how things happened, he was left with the absence of his brother. They had shared everything about their lives, an office, a foundation, meetings together most days, and there was a lot of fun along the way. He'll miss it forever.
Now, however, Will definitely feels the pressure now. It's all on him. His future looks different because of his brother's choices. It's not easy.
That's fucking bullshit. Like,
this is ridiculous.
Everything you've ever heard about being the fucking heir is that everything falls on my shoulders. You don't understand what it's like. Like, bullshit. You just wanted like a prop there to distract from anything that you fuck up.
And it just feels like really nasty behaviour to your brother.
Yeah.
You know, oh, there was a lot of fun along the way and I really miss him, but I'm going to talk shit about him in a broadsheet newspaper.
And I mean, this is just like, if you needed any clarification, Will making it incredibly clear what side he's on and where his priorities lie, and it's not with his brother.
And again, showing up how outrageous it is that people try to insist that the palace still follows that never complain, never explain motto.
Yeah.
These people are forever complaining and explaining.
I feel like nothing Will says here is particularly surprising to me. It's all what I would expect. But I still can't help feeling shocked that you would come out so strongly against your brother.
Yeah, it shows they really haven't learned from the 2 or 3 other times when a source close to him has issued these kind of quotes about his fury.
Yeah. But we also got some more information on how the news of the Oprah interview came to light.
Yes, according to the Mail on Sunday, ITV, who broke the story, found out about it because a member of Oprah's team reached out to the network to request access to Tom Bradby's interview with Meghan during the South Africa tour in 2019. So that's how the story got out. So that was an accident. So they had to rush forward the official announcement from CBS about the interview. And as well as that, Oprah reportedly filmed the interview with Harry and Meghan over 2 days last week. So it's already done.
That's very exciting. All done and dusted, just waiting to be aired. But we'd also been wondering about like these kind of dueling statements and this frostiness between what the Sussexes were saying on one hand and what the palace was saying about the final split. And we got a bit more information about that.
According to the Mail, they had initially planned for the Sussexes and the Queen to put out a joint statement about the final settlement over the separation, but they had to abandon that when both sides couldn't agree on the wording, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that makes sense because these two statements are so clearly at odds with each other.
Yeah. But, like, I thought that was interesting because I was slightly surprised that the statement from the palace had the line about Harry and Meghan confirming they weren't going to return. It seemed like giving a lot of agency and power to Harry and Meghan in the situation. And I'm surprised that that was something that the palace were happy to do. If that, like, what was the wording that they just couldn't agree on then?
I mean, on the other side, they could be blaming Harry and Meghan for not returning rather than accepting their own responsibility for not finding some kind of compromise.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And I think they couldn't agree on the wording about service, because that's clearly the key word in both statements that they have very different ideas about.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that is enough of our future segment. Let's wrap up the episode. When it comes to quote of the week, we have to go back to this Marina Hyde piece for The Guardian.
So funny.
It's already shared so widely and has so many great lines in it. My favourite was towards the end when she addresses British media commentators and says, "You've been outmaneuvered by an emotional wellness podcaster. It's like being out-strategized by kale."
So funny. I like that she also pointed out, "We're a country where the guys leading the media charge against Meghan are so emotionally warped. The only way they can begin to release their feelings of social, racial, and sexual resentment is by using a 94-year-old woman's feelings as proxy. They have disrespected the Queen really means they have disrespected this newspaper, or they have disrespected me. So you keep hearing people saying, how could they do this to the Queen? And it's the Queen I feel sorry for."
She's so fucking bang on with that. That is exactly what has been happening, and I know, and you know, that it's only guaranteed to keep happening when Prince Philip dies, particularly if he dies before this Oprah interview goes ahead. We are going to be hearing all about the poor Queen. What has the Queen done to deserve this? Exactly like she said here.
Absolutely. And it's all this, like, really weird code for, like she says, their own social, racial, sexual resentment. But on to fit for a king. Or maybe fit for a queen.
I think it's both. I think we want to talk about both.
Yeah.
In this pregnancy announcement photo, let's start with Meghan wearing a pale sleeveless dress by Carolina Herrera, which Meghan reportedly had made during her first pregnancy. And we know that she is friendly with the creative director of the brand, Wes Gordon, since back in her Suits days. But this really stood out to me because of what a remarkable contrast it is with the photos from her first pregnancy announcement at the beginning of the Sussex's tour in Australia. I'm sure you remember that very Rachel Zane style, fitted white sleeveless shift dress with the very high heels. This one, though, is so much more laid back. It's very loose, very flowing, although the photo is still very obviously staged in the sort of lifestyle influencer mode.
Yeah, that influencer mode that Meghan loves so much. I thought it was such a nice dress. I thought she looked so relaxed and, you know, had her hair down. It was great.
And the photo is black and white, like many of the images marking the milestones in Harry and Meghan's relationship, like their engagement portraits, the wedding portraits, their first and second royal Christmas cards, the photo announcing Archie's name with the Queen and Doria, and their first official portrait since leaving the royal family in Time magazine. But I think there was one element of the photo that really stood out for you. Literally the minute I showed you this photo, it was the only thing you could talk about.
Yeah, content warning, feet. Harry's barefoot is like very front and center in the photo. And even though I'm someone who doesn't like feet, I still don't think it was as extreme as the Daily Mail would have us believe. They like literally ran pieces on whether or not Harry's feet were deformed.
This headline cracked me up so much. Prince Harry bears his bunions. Duke may be suffering, quote, mild deformity due to years of high-impact training in the army, podiatrist claims, as fans call for him to, quote, put his dirty feet away after shoeless pregnancy announcement. It's so over the top.
It is so funny. And do you remember around the whole private jet scandal, people were also obsessed with whether or not Harry wore shoes at that Google Summit or whatever it was.
Yes.
Like, the tabloids seem to have this, I'm not kink shaming or anything, but like this obsession with Harry's feet.
We should also point out that they released this very cute, romantic photo announcing the pregnancy on Valentine's Day, but it was also almost 37 years to the day that Princess Diana and Prince Charles announced that they were expecting Prince Harry.
So a very meaningful date for them.
What about first in line, Tom?
It's got to be Oprah for landing this interview.
Yeah, I feel like, we were talking earlier about how there was a lot of talk about how Oprah has been courting Harry and Meghan for this interview for 3 years. But honestly, Harry and Meghan need Oprah more than Oprah needs Harry and Meghan. And, she doesn't interview just anyone.
Yeah.
So getting an Oprah interview really gives Harry and Meghan credibility.
Especially as so much of the criticism or, predictions from critics of Harry and Meghan when they left was that they would see their celebrity status wane and they would, fade into the shadows because people are only interested in them because of being royal and they're, being part of the royal family. And this is just like absolute proof that that is not the case.
Yeah, and I think even though we know Oprah won't want to make Meghan look bad because they are friends, I don't think she's going to shy away from asking questions that Harry or Meghan might not want to answer. Like, she knows we want specific details, not vague stories and oblique references.
Yeah.
And Oprah's best friend, the news anchor Gayle King, who's also friends with Harry and Meghan, said, "This is a big deal. I know Oprah has been working on the questions all weekend long. I'm told that nothing is off limits. She can ask anything she wants."
Wow.
So I'm very excited, and I'm just so glad that this interview is with Oprah and not with Ellen DeGeneres or James Corden.
Yeah.
Or one of their other friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's. I don't think it's going to be a softball interview, and I know people keep comparing it to Prince Andrew's interview with Emily Maitlis, but this is such a different circumstance. My God. So I am so excited.
Yeah, me too.
And I mean, I feel like all of this publicity is brilliant for Oprah. I'm not so sure it's brilliant for Harry and Meghan, because it does mean we're going to get like 3 weeks of probably hysterical coverage of what this interview is going to be about. It's going to be so hyped.
Yeah.
And the narrative by the time the interview actually arrives will possibly be totally different from anything that Harry and Meghan actually say.
Yeah.
And as well as that, I know a year ago Harry and Meghan had said they currently had no plans to do a big interview. So we'd heard from some of our listeners who were very disappointed that they were going to be doing an interview like this. How did you feel?
I was delighted when I heard, because I always thought that this was going to happen. I had hoped that it would be with Oprah and not with Ellen DeGeneres. I thought that would be the other kind of contender maybe for it. So I was very excited to get it, and it's definitely sooner than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I am a little bit apprehensive. Like, I'm excited because I love gossip.
Yeah.
But I am concerned about how raw Harry and Meghan seem to still be and what it is they might say.
Yeah.
And I think the media circus around it could possibly become unbearable.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I sort of feel like they haven't as well had long enough to spend on Archwell and stuff to really get it kind of grounded and be able to talk about that properly. It might be a little bit speculative, but I'm still very excited for it.
So what is coming up next week?
Well, as we mentioned, Philip has been in hospital and is due to stay in for observation over the weekend. Last thing we heard, Charles had been to the hospital to visit him, and we'll probably get more updates on what all that means.
Yeah, and I think it was the Mirror that reported that Prince Harry is reportedly quarantining in case he needs to fly back to the UK. But I feel like I'm so tapped out from Sussex news this week.
Yeah.
It would be fine by me if there wasn't a whole lot going on next week.
Yeah, and we can just give some proper attention to Eugenie's baby's name, which we didn't even find room for in this episode.
In case you hadn't heard it, it's August Philip Hawke Brooksbank. So thanks so much for listening and have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
Because what I really feel deeply from you and profoundly, that you just don't have head intelligence.